My name is Jackie Nance. Of course, when I was at Case Law, it was Jackie Jones. I am class of 92, and I actually ended up at Case. It's kind of funny. It was one of those things where my dad taught at the dental school, and so I was exposed to Case at a very early age. I was developing x-rays in the dental school at 4 years old. So I have a long history with Case. And when I wanted to go to college, I knew I wanted to go to Spelman, and my dad said, okay, well then you'll go to grad school at Case. I always think of my time at Case as challenging. In some ways, law school can be isolating, but thankfully, I had the Black Law Student Association that made a huge difference for me in feeling accepted, because I came from a family where there weren't any lawyers. So nobody really knew what to expect. And so you didn't understand what you were getting into first year. And so it was kind of jarring, but I also had an incredible support system with my family, with the community through Balsa, with people like Dean Clancy. I had some folks that I could reach out to, and that made the experience that much better. Interestingly, one of my favorite classes, which speaks to where I ended up, was nonprofit law. And I loved that class. And it sort of cemented my interest in the nonprofit sector. I actually thought about going on to get a master's in nonprofits, but I was like, 3 years of law school was enough. Looking back, I wish I had, but I loved that class. And then I took an advanced labor law class where, ironically, we ended up spending a lot of time talking about the NFL Players Association. And I wrote a research paper and presented it, and I loved that as well. So that was another class taught by an adjunct that I really enjoyed. So I never really had an interest in working in a law firm, and people were like, why'd you go to law school then? I loved writing and research, so I ended up doing just that with a professor at CSU. And we were working on school desegregation. So we were writing about what happened with school desegregation in San Francisco and doing papers on it and presenting. And because Cleveland was going through the deseg case at the time, I ended up, for a magazine I was also doing some work for, interviewing different law firms, specifically Black law firms. And one of the boutique Black law firms that I interviewed, it came up about my background and my work on school desegregation, and they were one of 2 firms working on the school deseg case for the mayor of Cleveland. And so that's what led me to working in a law firm when I never thought I would, was the deseg case. But I'm so grateful I did, because it's actually how I met my husband. So the firm was Timor, Lichko, and Brown, and one of the partners there is the one who actually encouraged my husband to ask me out. And it's kind of a funny story, because over the course of a summer, he called me and said, I want to talk to you about this issue of gaming, because our firm was hired by the mayor to look into riverboat gaming. At that time, there were a number of communities in Louisiana and Detroit that were, Illinois, that were doing riverboats. And the mayor wanted to understand, is this something truly good for the city? So he hired our firm to look into it. And I was put on that case. And so Fred contacted me and said, oh, I understand you're doing this for the mayor. Just want to, chat with you about some of the things you're finding. And we had been co-counsel on a number of cases, our firm and his firm. And so we went to lunch, and I came back. I wrote it up on my timesheet. And this went on all summer. We would talk about the different bond deals we were working on, or we would talk about the DSAG, just anything that was going on. We were talking about those things over the course of the summer. And then finally, at the end of the summer, he says, oh, I'm going to take you to the Terrace Club at that time, Jacobs Field. He said, so I'll pick you up. Okay. So he picks me up, takes me to Terrace Club. We have lunch. Now, mind you, all summer long, I'm writing this up on my timesheets. Like, okay, lunch with da-da-da, and this is what we discussed. And then at the end of this lunch, he drives me back to my office, and he turns to me and he's like, Jackie, I like you. And I was like, oh. So the rest, they say, is history. He said he jokes. He said he knew that he just wanted to close that deal. So and he did. And here we are, 25 amazing years later, with 2 kids, and I still feel like a newlywed. So that's one of the beautiful things about being a lawyer, is meeting him. Even before we got married, I realized that my passion had always been the nonprofit sector. I was doing a lot of volunteer work, and joined a couple of boards, Red Cross board, IdeaStream, and I realized that was more of interest to me, was the nonprofit sector. So ultimately, I ended up getting a phone call out of the blue from the Cleveland Clinic saying, well, will you come and interview to be a planned giving attorney at the clinic? And so I thought, let me see what this is like. Went, interviewed, offered me the job. Our team was the first to close on the Eye Institute. So I was there at the clinic when we were working on the Cancer Center and the Lerner Research Institute and the Eye Institute, and it was such an exciting time, and I loved working in development and being able to help people reach their goals. I knew I couldn't perform surgery or save a life, but this was my way of giving back, and that was always something that my parents taught us was very important, so I loved that work. So the PIN is for Autism Speaks and autism awareness and autism acceptance. I have 2 adult children on the spectrum, and I'm going to try not to tear up, but you always in life want to do things that speak to you. And working with Autism Speaks and trying to make a difference in the world for all people with autism is my labor of love. So I sit on the national board. I actually was humbled to be asked to be vice chair of that national board. And I love the work. We're just involved in things going on at Metro Health, at Cleveland Clinic, at a number of companies in town that have committed here locally, but nationally and internationally. We actually work with the World Health Organization. A lot of people don't realize that. And we are able to work to secure funding through the federal government, through state governments, and it's made a difference for all those on the autism spectrum. And so that to me is incredibly rewarding, and that's where I focus most of my time, in addition to being on Case Western Reserve's board. I would say that my goal is always to improve my community for all of the people who live here. And to me, an inclusive community, which includes neuro-inclusivity, is incredibly important to me. But it's also about lifting up all of those who need support, need guidance, need help. And we are blessed to be in a medical mecca in Northeast Ohio. And that allows us to do things for our community that other places could only dream about. The services we can provide are critically important to helping people live their best lives and reach their full potential, which is my ultimate goal. It is a big lift, but I'm not doing it alone. And that's the beauty of when you find your people and when you find your purpose, then you can really accomplish anything. I was overwhelmed when I was called and said, we want you to be in the Society of Benchers. Ironically, my husband, who did not go to Case, but he's one of the community leaders who was inducted a while back. It was something I never imagined I would receive. I'm not some, top lawyer at a major firm. I'm just doing work in the community to make a difference. And I think oftentimes there are a lot of us in the community who are behind the scenes, and we're not trying to be out front. That's not our purpose, that's not our goal. But we find over time that sometimes those folks who are doing those things behind the scenes are overlooked for recognition. And to be acknowledged for the work that I'm doing on behalf of our community and our society is something I never could have even imagined, and it warms my heart and fills my soul. For anyone who knows my origin story with Case Western Reserve, it really starts with my father and his connection to Case. And so my ability when I was asked to join the board was an opportunity to continue his legacy. Going to Case Law School, having him nearby, being able to walk to my grandmother's and sit and eat pizza with her when I needed to get out of the law school. Those were all part of my Case experience. But serving on the board has given me that chance for me to give back to the institution that led to the career, that led to the love of my life, that led to being able to help people like my children. And so I am grateful to Case for all those things. And I say to the students at Case, you're in the middle of it. And I'll be honest, it's 3 years of hell. There's no avoiding that. But find your people and find your purpose. And once you do that, really, it sounds trite to say the sky's the limit, but really, could I have imagined that I would be where I am now when I was getting ready for an exam It just didn't seem possible. But really, don't limit yourself. So I grew up actually in Pepper Pike. When my parents moved here, so I was born on an Army base in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, which soldiers call it Fort Lost in the Woods. That's how in the middle of nowhere it is. But a year after I was born and I was adopted, my parents brought my brother and I to Cleveland. My dad got the position at Case, and that's what brought us to Cleveland. And we lived in Shaker, and then my parents moved to Pepper Pike. We were the first Black family to move there, and they shot at our house, stoned the windows, all of that. So I had an upbringing where we were there, but very alone and isolated in some ways, but it made our family stronger. And I went through Orange schools, and then said, I need an experience where I'm not being judged on my race or my sex, which is why I went to Spelman. And that helped kind of build my foundation, having a strong family, having a great education at Spelman to lead me to the education at Case and going to law school. And I actually went to law school. I knew at 16 I wanted to be a lawyer, which a lot of people don't know that that's what they want to do, but I had been a ballerina. And I thought I was going to spend my life as a ballerina and hopefully one day dance for Dance Theater of Harlem. That was my goal in life. And then I spent the summer in DC with Duke Ellington School of Performing Arts and realized that you can break your budget by getting a t-shirt at Commander Salamander in Georgetown. I blew my budget and ate apples for 3 days because I couldn't afford to buy food at 16, and I wasn't going to tell my parents that I needed them to send me money. So that's when I said, I love to dance, but I don't live to dance. So I took a turn and said, I'm going to law school. And ultimately, I hope one day to be able to help dancers. And I actually sat on the Ohio Arts Council for several years and chaired the Arts Council. And so, in some ways, I feel like I was able to give back to dancers and to artists. But my life has been about serving others. And so nonprofit work is that is who I am.